Welcome back to ThunderCats episode by episode. Today, we're covering episode 2, The Unholy Alliance. Premiering on January 23rd, 1985, The Unholy Alliance picks up directly where Exodus left off. The ThunderCats are surveying the wreckage of their ship, with Panthro tossing out items, exclaiming his own frustration. Tigra asks him what all can be done, and Panthro talks about how he has maybe enough to make a vehicle called a Thunder Tank. Tigra remarks that they can always count on Panthro, and Panthro imparts this wisdom.
No problem. Main thing in an emergency is to stay calm.
Tigra then tells the Wily twins to stop playing with their space rations, informing them that they'll eat after they've unloaded the heavy gear. We then cut to the mutants flying around the planet, commenting on how different it is from their own. This is when they come across a structure with clear signs of life, an onyx pyramid that's exuding power. As they pull in closer to inspect the structure, a beam of energy strikes their ship and brings them down. Back to the ThunderCats, a discussion happens concerning whether or not Lion-O should stay and help unload or go scout the area. Tigra tells Lion-O to take the sword and claw shield with him just in case he runs into any danger, with Lion-O confidently saying he thinks he can handle anything he runs into. As Lion-O leaves, the other ThunderCats keep talking, Panthro and Cheetara asking Tigra if it's a wise idea for Lion-O to be permitted to shirk responsibility like that. Tigra responds,
"Remember, Lord Lion-O spent 10 galacto-years in a suspension capsule. During that time, he grew in size, but he did not grow up. He missed those first-hand life experiences through which one matures."
Meanwhile, Slythe believes the pyramid is mocking him and takes Monkian and Jackalman to confront whatever is in the pyramid. A door magically forms, and this exchange happens.
Enter. Arm yourselves. Your weapons are not needed. You are welcome here.
The mutants follow a ball of light down a corridor leading to a large room that includes a cauldron, a sarcophagus, and 4 demonic statues that the mutants think look like an ancient race of their own people. As they comment on the sarcophagus, it comes to life, showing who summoned them.
As long as evil exists, Mumm-Ra lives.
This is Mumm-Ra, the devil priest of Third Earth. Mumm-Ra proclaims that he knows why the mutants are here, as he knows about the Eye of Thundera. Apparently, he's known for centuries about its existence. The mutants coyly comment about how they don't think they need his help, and Monkian confidently states that all they have to do to get rid of Mumm-Ra is to radio the other ships and level the pyramid. Mumm-Ra's response to this is to tell them to look into the cauldron. As they do, a live image of their own downed ship appears, as Mumm-Ra causes it to be consumed by the desert. The mutants, out of options, defer to Mumm-Ra. They agree to team up, both groups obviously planning on turning on the other the moment they get the opportunity. Mumm-Ra once again tells them to look into the cauldron where they see Lion-O walking alone. The mutants ask for his location so they can ambush him, clearly thinking Mumm-Ra can't leave his tomb. Mumm-Ra responds by transporting them to Lion-O's location. While this is all happening, Lion-O is goofing off in the woods until he hears an animal call. Happening upon the creatures, Lion-O runs down the hill, sword in hand, hoping to hunt the creatures. This is halted, however, when the sword comes to life, flying out of Lion-O's hand and embedding itself in the ground. As much as Lion-O pulls on it and commands it, it will not budge. This is when Jaga appears before Lion-O and imparts moral guidance to the adult child, as well as explains why the sword won't obey him.
The sword will never obey in order to destroy wantonly, Lion-O.
When Lion-O tries to downplay what he wanted to do, Jaga issues a sharp rebuke and a reminder of the sword's purpose.
Son, your food supplies are plentiful at present, and those gentle creatures have as much right to the life force as you do, Lion-O. The sword will only come to life to combat evil. Do you understand?
Jaga leaves, and Lion-O briefly laments on him not staying longer before the sword growls, alerting Lion-O to danger. The mutants have finally arrived. They attack Lion-O, and he calls for the other ThunderCats. They come to his aid, and the mutants lose the fight, disappearing into literal nothingness. Panthro is troubled by their unusual disappearance, and Lion-O wants to know why Tigra and Cheetara didn't arrive. Lion-O opting to try and find them. The mutants arrive back at the pyramid and get mocked by Mumm-Ra.
The dreaded mutants, the scourge of the universe, return with their tails between their legs, having failed to disarm a single overgrown boy.
The mutants, being fairly evil creatures, did not respond well to mockery, as those types rarely do, and call Mumm-Ra's bluff on his own power. This is where we first see Mumm-Ra's transformation from a mummified corpse into a massive demonic form. Given power by entities he calls the ancient spirits of evil via an incantation. Having transformed, he flies out of the top of the pyramid with a fearsome scream. While this is happening, Lion-O continues to search for Tigra and Chitara. He happens upon a tar pit and inspects it, noting that it's hard to get off. This is where the sword once again warns him of danger. In a fearsome whirlwind, Mumm-Ra appears before him. Lion-O starts to call on the others, but stop.
No. As Lord of the ThunderCats, I must fight this demon alone.
The two engage in a fight, and the sword temporarily gets stuck in the tar. This is when Mumm-Ra reveals his true nature to Lion-O.
You think to destroy Mumm-Ra, the ever-living? It cannot be done, boy!
Lion-O, finally realizing he's out of his depth, tries to call the others, but the sword does not respond to him. The other ThunderCats not arriving, the fight continues. Mumm-Ra succeeds in pinning Lion-O, gloating about his victory as he leans forward. Reflexively, Lion-O covers his own face with the claw shield, and Mumm-Ra is horrified by what he sees in the reflection. The scene then cuts to Tigra and Chitara inspecting a rock deposit. Tigra commenting on how it'll make good building material for a fortress called a cat's lair. Chitara is distracted, though. She thinks she hears the roar of the sword and feels something isn't right. Her and Tigra take off in the direction of danger. Mumm-Ra, still terrified by his own reflection, panics and flies into the distance as all the ThunderCats finally show up. The twins ask what the ugly object flying into the distance is, and Lion-O tells them.
He is called Mumm-Ra, the ever-living.
The ThunderCats comment on Mumm-Ra's weakness, and that Lion-O taking him on solo is both rash and courageous. Mumm-Ra appears before the mutants once again and turns back to his weaker form. The mutants commenting on his lack of sword and mocking him for failing just like they did. Mumm-Ra commenting his own thoughts on his defeat as the episode closes.
There will be another time.
Show notes by Leonard Starr. One thing I had written was that Third Earth was Earth after a big atomic conflagration, but they took that out because they thought it would be too scary for kids. It didn't matter. It was still Third Earth, however that happened to come about. It was the cycle after mankind was done with the planet. It was not inhabited by human beings as we know. All we did was eliminate the references to how it came about. I tried to remember what I liked when I was a kid and what kids still like, and they like mummies. They've redone the original Mummy film now several times and done sequels and everything else. It was the same reasoning. What did I call him? The ever-living? The fact that he could transform into various shapes was because kids like things like Transformers. There isn't a heck of a lot of original stuff in there. Now my thoughts. This is, obviously, the episode that introduces the main real villain of the series, Mumm-Ra, the ever-living. This is an immortal and immoral devil priest from what the series refers to as First Earth. While the series never expands on his exact backstory, opting to only go into previous conflicts he's had in the past, he's the only villain that stays during the entirety of the show's run. In many other cartoons in both the 80s and now, the main villain has some sort of backstory with the protagonists of the show. This is where Mumm-Ra differs. While he may know some later revealed villains of ancient Thundera, he has no ties to Thundera or the ThunderCats themselves. Having him be an unkillable, powerful devil priest is a smart move on Star's part. This ensures that they'll never truly be rid of Mumm-Ra. Like the evil that gives him unholy life, you can never get rid of him. This also sets him apart from the mutants. They both might share the same lust for power and willingness to backstab each other. The series makes it clear that Mumm-Ra is a different type of evil. The mutants serve themselves, and therefore by proxy serve evil. But with Mumm-Ra, there is no proxy property here. He serves evil directly, and has no qualms about doing so. In a world where more and more villains are given sympathetic backstories, or even redeemed, Mumm-Ra stands in clear opposition to that. He's not misguided, he doesn't think he's doing the right thing, nor does he have some bizarre political or sociological ideology that drives him. He's just evil, knows it, and loves it. This is shown in how he treats the threat his new allies leveled at him. He heartlessly sunk their ship. And remember, it was full of other mutant crewmen. The implication is that they're all buried alive now, likely dying. Mumm-Ra shows no remorse for this, showing a stark difference in how he operates compared to the mutants. While the mutants may be abusive to their own at the worst of times, wholesale killing each other is outside of even their moral compass. But this poses no issue for Mumm-Ra. The reason he wants the Eye of Thundera is for its power. He's not fully aware of what it's capable of, but he wants it because all evil tends to come down to greed and jealousy in one way or another. On the other hand, we have Lion-O doing exactly what you'd expect a kid in an adult's body to do. Play around, get into trouble, and then need help. There's a lot of people that draw comparisons between He-Man and Lion-O due to surface similarities and get upset that Lion-O needs so much help at the beginning of the series. They expect him to just tank through things, and while that eventually happens later in the series, I have to remind you that Lion-O is mentally 12 years old, and anyone with kids will tell you that they need a lot of help. The point of Lion-O isn't to initially show him as an unbeatable solo hero, it's to show how he gets to that point. It's a fantasy coming-of-age show where you see Lion-O mature and become both the leader and hero he needs to be. Think about it. Do you think Prince Adam wouldn't need help if he was given the power sword at the age of 12 with no real training or knowledge? If you think he wouldn't, then you're not operating with logic or knowledge. Speaking of swords though, this is where we see what Jaga will essentially be doing for the rest of the series. Giving Lion-O information about the sword, or sometimes situations and people Lion-O doesn't have full info on. This later on can be used as a very cheap way to reach a resolution, but here it serves a specific purpose. Remember, none of the other ThunderCats know anything about the Sword of Omens outside of myth and legend. Jaga was its previous wielder and the only one that could really inform Lion-O about how to use it. Thankfully, I don't believe Jaga was overused. While many fans believe he appears in every episode, you may be surprised to learn that out of the 130 episodes of the series, Jaga only appears in 39 of them. Another thing of note is the beginning of character development for Cheetara, with her sensing Lion-O is in danger and thinking she heard the roar of the sword. This plays into an ability we find out she has in the 5th episode of the series. While we're on the topic of that scene, I want to clear some things up here. I do not believe for a moment that the tar on the sword stopped it from working. We see later on that essentially nothing stops this weapon when it needs to do something. But what we have seen, even in this episode, is that the sword will absolutely do specific things to teach Lion-O a lesson. The lesson in this instance? Don't feel the need to take on something terrible solo over some self-imposed sense of responsibility. Part of being a leader is recognizing your limitations and leaning on others when you need to borrow their strength. In this scene, you don't see the sword summon the others. Instead, it just seems to tap Cheetara on the shoulder and the others follow suit, claiming to hear battle sounds. This is just the start of a lot of built-up lessons and character dynamics that we'll see later in the show. Of note, though, is that the current IP owners of ThunderCats, Warner Brothers, keeps releasing the series on DVD with this episode's background music missing. While it's a great opportunity to really give the sound design and voice work a listening to, a bit is lost with the musical score being out, such as the ambiance of Mumm-Ra's tomb. Here's the scene with the cut music.
As long as evil exists, Mumm-Ra lives.
And with the music in place.
As long as evil exists, Mumm-Ra lives.
The latter adds quite a bit more in terms of atmosphere for the scene. Not sure why Warner Brothers keeps screwing it up, but it's Warner Brothers and we shouldn't be surprised. Hope you enjoyed this episode and will join me for next week's. If you want to support the channel, feel free to join the Patreon listed in the description or just hop into the community Discord. See you next week and take care.